Hello, how is everyone doing? It is your fallen angel back with another video. Today, we are covering the tarot. Now, we're going to go over all 22 cards and explain its significance in the physical world, the psychic world, the spiritual world, and the physical plane. Now, before we get started, feel free to check us out on Patreon, Rumble, Twitter, Instagram, things of that nature. Also like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's begin. Divination, by means of cards, is a very ancient practice. It has been affirmed that the cards as we know them were invented for the purpose of beguiling the hours of feeble-minded monarchs, gaming purposes, but the tarot, from which ordinary playing cards are obviously derived, has a very ancient origin, and a moreover, very profound one. So besides its use for wasting time gaming, it has a connection to the spiritual plane. It is said that Hermes, the thrice great, engraved the symbols of the tarot upon 22 laminae of gold. Various expositions of all tarot have appeared from time to time, and all agreeing in tracing a connection between the 22 major keys and the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, beginning with Aleph, or A. Several attempts have been made to associate the symbols of the tarot with the 3 divine principles, the 12 signs, and 7 planets, but all attempts appear to be fanciful. So, the reason we're doing the tarot today is because we've touched on astrology, a bit of pieces on astrology on this channel. We've also been speaking on Kabbalah, so it's only right that we tie both together and speak on the tarot. In addition to the 22 major keys, there are 56 minor keys, and these are the same as the ordinary pack of 52 cards, with the exception that there are 4 knights, one of each suit, in addition to the knaves. These knights, or heralds, precede the ace of each suit. Of the 52 remaining cards, we have 4 suits, corresponding to the 4 seasons of the year: cups, batons, deniers, and swords. Otherwise, as we know it, hearts, clubs, diamonds, and spades. So guys, we know that a deck of cards resembles the weeks of the year. This can also be used for magic and other reasons. Also spellcasting. We'll talk about cardomancy later. These are disposed as follows: spring for diamonds, summer for clubs, autumn for hearts, winter for spades. The 52 cards correspond to the 52 weeks of the solar year. Several works have recently appeared, setting forth the meanings of the tarot cards and the methods of employing them. Every arcanum has a threefold application, having related to the spirit, soul, and body of man, or the spiritual, intellectual, and material worlds, according to those Kabbalists who have attempted an exposition. But a fourfold application for the fourfold reality is what we look at, because we know this is operating in a fourfold reality. The spiritual, the intellectual, the psychic or emotional, and the material or physical planes. For the soul of man has 2 distinct aspects: the nous, or mind, and the antinous, or passional principle. These being otherwise referred to as the lower and higher self, or the human and animal man. The form or corpus being altogether material and no active save what it derives from, the animal soul investing in. On these lines, the following interpretation may be found a useful key to the 22 Arcana. So guys, let's just jump right into the cards itself. So, tarot card number 1, the Magician. It's represented by a man holding a baton or wand over 3 symbolic forms: the cup, the sword, and the denier. Around him are springing up roses or lilies, and his head is a double nimbus in the form of an 8. This is the magician, he who is master of the 4 worlds, the 4 elements, and the 4 principles, who is capable of exercising the creative will, and adept. In the spiritual world, he stands for creative will. In the intellectual world, the pure volition, transformation, resolution, the ability to propound and to resolve a problem, to control the mind. In the psychic world, desire, which is the lower expression of the will, the ability to generate and to destroy, the control of the psychic forces, and the mastery of the passions. In the physical world, the control of the elements, the mastery of physical forces, the power to acquire and to dispose of the material benefits of life, a great inventor. So we see this infinity logo above the magician, right? We have to understand that this symbolizes what you give comes back. What comes around goes around. It's this loop that the 8 has. We understand the 8 has a very symbolic number in numerology. It's also the money. It's also the number for money and wealth. So number 2 tarot card is the High Priestess. The figure of a woman seated, her head surmounted by a solar disc between horns. On her breast is a cross, and on her lap the Torah, or book of the law. While at her feet is the lunar crescent. She is seated between the pillars of the temple, called Yashin, or Boaz, security and strength. It represents Isis, Maya, and the Virgin Mother of the world. This arcanum is also called the door of the hidden sanctuary. In the spiritual world, it denotes divine Sophia, the creative imagination, the universal matrix, in and through which the supreme will is manifested. In the intellectual world, the binary or reflection of unity, the law of alternation, the pairs of opposites, positive and negative, the reason which weighs and balances, discerning by comparison of knowing things. In the psychic world, attraction and repulsion, the relations of the sexes, love and hatred, or duality. In the physical world, chemical affinity, as acids and alkalis, trade, commerce, interchange, barter, the women related to the man for the furtherance of the ends of destiny. So the High Priestess just can be considered as the priestess of duality. The Empress, otherwise Isis Urania, a female figure reclining. She holds the symbol, power of in her hand, and at her feet is the Ankh, or symbol of life, Venus. At her feet the corn springs, full-eared and plentiful. She is surrounded by the beauties of nature. She represents nature in association with the superior world or the supernatural. She is the first product of the supreme will and imagination, the progeny of divine wisdom and love, and unites in herself intelligence and power, and the highest manifestation. In the spiritual world, this arcanum denotes the knowledge of the two worlds, the manifest and unmanifest, the past and the future, united in the eternal now. In the intellectual world, ideation, the productive power of mind, discrimination. In the psychic world, the art of generation, fecundity, parentage. In the physical plane, the power of expansion, of multiplication, growth, development, wealth, and plenty. So number 4, the Emperor, or the Stone Cube. A man of mature age seated upon a chair of initiation, the Masonic Cube. In his right hand is the specter of deific power, the ensated cross, and in his left the globe, the symbol of possession. In the spiritual world, this figure represents the realization, successfully and continuously, of the divine virtues in oneself. In the intellectual world, the realization of the idea of related and dependent existence, affirmation, negation, discussion, and solution. In the physical world, attainment of happiness by the satisfaction of desires, the realization of dual nature in male and female successions. In the physical world, the realization of material effects, the reward of effort and correct judgment, the concrete foundation establishment. Number 5 on the tarot cards, the Hierophant, or the Master of the Secrets. On his head is the mitre, in his left hand the triple cross. His right hand is uplifted with the sign of the benediction. At his feet are the keys of the kingdom, which unlock the gates of life and death, or heaven and hell. He is the symbol of the Grand Master. In the spiritual plane, it denotes the universal law by which infinite manifestations of the divine being are regulated. In the intellectual world, religion, the connection between the infinite and the finite, the one and the many. In the psychic world, the regulation of passions, self-control and discipline. In the physical plane, liberty within the limits of the law, direction, and control of natural forces. The 6th, the Twoways, or the lovers. Beneath the outspread hands of the flaming cherub, stand a man and woman with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge upon either hand. Around the tree of knowledge, the serpent is coiled. In the spiritual world, the arcanum symbolizes the knowledge of good and evil, the conscience, or the left and right hemispheres of the brain. In the intellectual world, the laws of necessity and liberty, of duty and privilege. In the psychic world, the choice between denial or consent to the promptings of the lower nature, the determination of conduct, the experience of indulgence and abstination. Abstention, instinct. The physical world, the antagonism of natural forces, dissociation and disintegration, fractures, divorce, parting. Number 7, the chariot, or the chariot of Osiris. The figure of the sun god stands in a car drawn by two sphinxes, the one black and the other white. It represents the illumination of the lower nature by the higher self, of earth by the solar orb, of the soul by the spirit. In the spiritual world, the sacred septenary, the ascendancy of spirit over matter, the penetration of the mysteries by the light of divine intelligence. In the intellectual world, the dispersal of doubt and error by the light of intellectual, mental acumen. In the psychic world, the decimation of vital energy by magnetic vigor, geniality and warmth of nature, vitality. In the physical world, the gamut of the seven senses, radiation, energy, force, the fulfillment of ambitions. The muzzled lion, or strength. A woman closing the mouth of a lion by a strength which demands no effort at all. In the spiritual world, it means the omnipotent. In the intellectual world, moral and intellectual force. The determination of energy to the accomplishment of things by knowledge of the law. In the psychic world, the use of the psychic forces in the processes of development, the conquest of the animal nature. In the physical world, the conservation of energy, control and direction of force, mastery of the elements, vitality and rejuvenation. Number 9, the veiled lamp or the hermit. The figure of a sage or a philosopher, carrying a lamp in one hand and a staff in the other. He represents the pilgrim soul, the seeker after truth. In the spiritual world, it denotes the realization of the divine selfhood by manifestation or embodiment. In the intellectual world, prudence and circumspection, discrimination of true and false, of right and wrong, classification. In the psychic world, selection, choice, likes and dislikes, morality. In the physical plane, molecular construction, science, discovery, distinction of caste, order and arrangement, carefulness, caution. Number 10, the Sphinx, or known as the Wheel of Fortune. The rota, or the wheel, on which is seated the Sphinx, upholding the sword. Around the wheel are the letters of the law, as defined in the tarot, and the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac, the man, lion, bull, and eagle. It represents the law of correlated succession. In the spiritual world, the law of karma, spiritual, cause and effect, spiritual selection. In the intellectual world, the rational faculty, induction and deduction, connectedness, perception of relativity and time intervals, progression. In the psychic world, the regulation of emotions and passions and the application of the psychic forces by the moral law, regime, training, and orderlessness. In the physical plane, the law of action and reaction, good and bad fortune, the cyclic laws of events, periodicity, rise and fall, revolution, and circulation. So now we're going to look at the man, lion, bull, and eagle, what it is together. So before we go back to 11, let's look at the tetramorph. This symbol is that of the aspirant to the occult initiation. The symbol of man, bull, lion, and eagle or serpent denote the 4 maxims: know, will, dare, keep silent, which are imposed on all neophytes. These are the keys to the attainment of power. Back to number 11, guys. So the 11th on the tarot cards, justice, or the sword and balance. Justice is seated and vested in the robes of judge. In the left hand, she holds the scales evenly balanced, and in her right, the sword uplifted. She represents the impartiality of heaven and proclaims that God is no respecter of persons, that heaven has no favorites, but also rewards virtue and punishes vices. In the spiritual world, it's divine justice. In the intellectual world, pure reason, correct judgment, comparison, and equity. In the psychic world, the attainment of peace and happiness by moderation, temperance, and impartiality. And in the physical plane, the balance of forces, the law of equilibrium, attraction and repulsion, compensation, sense of values, rewards, and punishments. In essence, this is just exactly what justice is in all the worlds of the fourfold reality. Now, number 12. The sacrifice, or the hanged man. A man with a golden halo is suspended by 1 foot from a tree, the free limb being placed so as to form an inverted 4, an inverted figure 4. It represents the divine giving forth, the revealed law. In the spiritual world, the sacrifice of the spirit to matter for the ends of evolution. In the intellectual world, the law of repression, antagonism, inversion, and self-sacrifice. In the psychic world, madness, offensiveness, misanthropy. And in the physical plane, depolarization, reversal, penalty, reaction, loss, and undoing. Number 13. Death, or the reaping skeleton. The figure of the great skeleton riding upon a horse, to whom even the great ones of earth do homage. It represents the divine law of reversion, the going back of things to their source, inbreathing. In the spiritual plane, it denotes manifestation of the divine activity in life, creation and transformation. In the intellectual world, the law of action and reaction, introspection, inductive reasoning, ecstasy. In the psychic world, disappointment, denial of affections, reclusiveness, deprivation of psychic force, and catalepsy. In the physical plane, death, ruin, paralysis, collapse, and nullity. So, we know 13 to be a very symbolic number. Even in modern days, we understand that Friday the 13th holds some significance because of this tarot card. Number 14, the two urns, or Temperance. An angelic figure pours water from one vessel to another. On his forehead is the symbol of life, and on his breast the ineffable name, Adonai, and the triangle within the square. It represents the divine life and activity. In the spiritual world, the eternal movement of life. In the intellectual world, the combination of ideas, friends, and sociology. In the psychic world, the interplay of the emotions, reciprocal affection, intercourse, social life. In the physical plane, the relations of the sexes, chemical combination, amalgamation, public intercourse. Number 15. The Typhon, or the devil, the evil one seated upon the throne in the Inferno. His footstool, an iron cube to which male and female devils are chained. It represents the spirit of discord. In the spiritual world, the principle of evil, the refractory, will oppose to the predestined order of things. In the intellectual world, magic, mystery, the unknown, controversy, free thought, fatalism. In the psychic world, anger, passion, hatred, malice, and fear. In the physical plane, antipathy, discord, strife, repulsion, riot, and lawlessness. Number 16. The blasted tower, or the lightning flash. A tower struck by lightning. A crown is seen falling from the pinnacle, and also two men. It denotes divine visitation. In the spiritual world, the overthrow of spiritual pride, the descent of Typhon, the fall of the angels. In the intellectual world, the pride of intellect and its consequence, the law of retribution and insanity. In the psychic world, psychic repercussion, ostination, the humbling of the autocrat. In the physical plane, catalysms, earthquakes, storms, overthrow, reversal, ruin, fatality, sudden death, catastrophe, and accidents. The star of the Maggie, or the star. A female pouring water from one vessel into a lake, and from another upon the dry land. Above her are the 7 stars, among which they shine the great pole star of the Maggie. It represents the divine, expectancy. In the spiritual plane, faith, the realization of hope, manifestation of the unveiled, the beatific vision. In the intellectual world, absolute knowledge, the evidence of experience, illumination, and astrology. In the psychic world, expectancy, geniality, sympathy, charity, optimism, and confidence. In the physical plane, birth, success, relief, and sustenance. Number 18 on the tarot cards. The moon, the twilight or the moon, a night scene, the luminary distilling dew upon the earth, while a dog and a wolf are baying the moon, and a crab is crawling from the water. It denotes the great infinitude, the spiritual world, the abysm of the infinite, the womb of time, the divine amplitude, infinity, spiritual darkness. In the intellectual world, the darkness of negation, imbecility, lunacy, vacuity, time and space, and distinguished from duration and distance. In the physic world, the psychic world, doubt, despair, hesitancy, vacillation, and inconstancy. In the physical plane, darkness, emptiness, denial, enemies, snares, and ambushes. Number 19, the sun, the resplendent light, a child with the banner of life seated upon a white horse. The child's head is adorned by a caplet of flowers, while above him shines a brilliant sun. It represents the divine effulgence. In the spiritual world, it is the supreme heaven, the presence of the divine being, the kingdom of heaven, the angelic life. In the intellectual world, the first principle, the origin of the source of things, the laws of being. The psychic world, vital energy, magnetic power, radiant joy, happiness, and benevolence. In the physical plane, life, energy, force, success, honors, elevation, and attainment. So guys, we also learned in one of the astrology videos that Leo is ruled by the sun. Number 19 is also ruled by the sun, on which I am born on both. Number 20, the resurrection or the judgment. The angel of life sounding the trumpet. While the dead rise from their tombs, it represents the great vocation. In the spiritual world, spiritual awakening, the call to the divine life and presence, the divine consciousness. In the intellectual world, revelation of the genius aspiration. In the psychic world, responsiveness, activity, conversion, moral regeneration, new regime. In the physical plane, respond to stimulus, reflects action, elective affinity, elevation, mission, office, utility, and work. Number 21. The crown of the Maggie, or the world. In the center of the circle is seen a figure, or of a woman, representing nature. The circle is variously a serpent, with its tail in its mouth, representing eternity, and a wreath of laurels, denoting conquest of attainment. At the four corners are seen the four fixed signs, denoting stability and endurance, the four quarters of the world, and the four elements. It denotes immortality. So guys, the symbol of the snake, always this circling around and biting its tail, it just explains that life comes in full circle. It explains the Fibonacci loop. It explains how life starts, right? It explains how it ends up eating its own tail, because this cycle of birth, death, and rebirth ends up happening, right? This cycle of being a baby to being an adult to being a parent, this is all part of the Fibonacci loop. So in the spiritual world, divine continuity, immortality. In the intellectual world, the mystery of the ages, adeptship, the law of continuity, supreme knowledge. In the psychic world, patience, endurance, steadfastness, fidelity, morality, integrity, perfect satisfaction, the virtuous enjoyment of all delights. In the physical plane, position, power, honor, distinction, wealth, long life, happiness, and inheritance. Number 22 and the final card on the Tarot Arcana. The blind fool, or folly, or just a fool. A vain and bedizened youth, carrying a staff and bundle upon his shoulder, holding in his hand a flower of defiance, with haughty mien. He walks blindly to the verge of a precipice. It is the symbol of divine inscrutability. In the spiritual world, the law of divine necessity. In the intellectual world, fatalism, egotism, blind credulity, ignorance, and error. In the psychic world, unrestrained passion, selfishness, vanity, and speculation. And in the physical plane, inconsequence, blindness, danger, ruin, detachment, isolation, conspicuous folly. These interpretations are not presumed to be exhaustive, nor to follow any other order than that of the tarot cards, which, needless to say, have been shuffled considerably since their delivery to the world by the thrice great Hermes, or Hermes Trismegistus. They represent the 3 stages of initiation, with their 10, 7, and 3 steps, culminating in attainment, 21, or failure, 22. He who can dispose the symbols of the tarot, or golden book of Hermes, will need no other initiation than he can himself effect. So guys, this was a video explaining the tarots, all 22 cards, explaining the spiritual plane, the intellectual plane, the psychic plane, as well as the physical plane. We understand in this cosmos we're living in a fourfold reality. So this was just a video explaining all the tarot cards, how they tie in with astrology, as well as the Kabbalah. So feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. I'd love to read them. Also check us out on Patreon, Rumble, Twitter, Instagram, things of that nature. It has been your fallen angel, and I am out.